Good morning, welcome to our programme. It is Tuesday. If you are black, you are 8 times more likely to be stopped and searched by a police officer than any other ethnic group. Although it's been used around 300,000 times across England and Wales in the past year, only 17% of those led to an actual arrest. For innocent people, being stopped in the street can be scary, it can be intimidating. For some, it can lead to real distrust of police officers. The country's biggest force, the Metropolitan Police, say it's vital to reduce knife crime. 21 teenagers have been stabbed to death in London alone so far this year. Our own reporter, Noel Phillips, was stopped and searched twice within a few months. After he complained about his treatment, the Met apologised to him. Here's a film he made about it.
I'm sure the officers explained to you, obviously, you've just been searched because there's been an incident where someone's produced a flick knife, yeah? Space for one juvenile male.
A glimpse into one of the police's most controversial powers, stop and search.
I think it's down to how you dress and your race.
I wouldn't blanket say it, we're looking to stop and search for all black people or young black men.
Your behaviour, how you was on your bike.
OK.
I've been stopped and searched twice in the last 4 months.
I'm allowed to film.
Stay still, OK?
We also hear claims about officers abusing their powers.
I've seen many police officers stop people that what I consider would be based on their racial prejudices because of the colour of their skin.
I think it is a really useful tool when properly targeted, when properly focused, and when people have really good grounds.
But that's not always the case, because for people like me who've been on the receiving end of being stopped and searched, it can often leave you feeling victimised, or in some cases, like a criminal.
Mate, stop walking away. Stop.
For many, it's images like this that feeds the resentment of stop and search.
First, okay? Stop, don't resist out of them.
But even though far fewer people are now being stopped,
My colleague is going to search you, okay?
according to Home Office figures, if you're black, you are 8 times more likely to be stopped and searched compared to any other ethnic group.
You don't. I've explained it to you, though.
I have been stopped over 125 times in my lifetime.
Ken Hines was first stopped at the age of 17. He's now a youth mentor.
It made me an angry man. It made me see the police as the enemy. I made the mistakes, but it doesn't mean that you young men have to make the same mistake that I've made.
How can we stop police stopping us and searching?
The way that we can stop the police stopping us unnecessarily is by holding them to account. But just because you got stop and search doesn't mean you've done anything bad.
But you do accept that the police have a job to do. There are bad guys out there.
There are many bad guys out there. I accept that stop and search is one of the tools in the armour of the police to be used. But since stop and search has come out of a racist law called the Sus Law, it's not surprising that 40 years on, we're still getting this disproportionality that is still here.
A quarter of a century ago, riots in Brixton led to the end of the so-called Sus laws, which allowed the police to stop and arrest anyone on suspicion, but it was widely believed to have been abused by officers to harass young black men. And it appears opinions are divided as to whether much has changed since then.
The amount of times I see black young guys going from school, getting stopped and searched, it's just frustrating.
Barry is 14 and says his first ever contact with the police was when he was searched on his way home from school 6 months ago.
About to go home, I was playing with my keys, just feeling bored, and I accidentally dropped my keys near the police station. And then some police, they came over. They said, because at the time I had a bag as well, so they said, can you empty your bag? And then I said, sure.
I was pretty scared because I knew, but at the same time I was nervous because I knew I never had done anything. So.
13-year-old Gucci has never been in trouble with the law until he was stopped in his school uniform last year.
I've been stopped and searched once when I was 12 last year. I was on my way to training and I was at the bus stop waiting for my bus and 2 police officers approached me and they said I've matched the description of something that had happened.
I've been stopped a lot of times during when I was young.
Whilst they've never been in trouble with the police, 26-year-old Ahmed has. He says he used to be part of a gang.
Do you think you were stopped because of the way you looked, or maybe because of what you were wearing?
The way I looked and what I was wearing. My colour was the main thing I got stopped.
Do you think it's really just down to that?
Yeah.
Why?
I've been stopped over 70 times because of my colour. Even now I do something good for the community, I still get stopped.
Don't you accept that the police, they have a job to do and they have to try and keep people safe?
They have a job to do. I understand that they have, but there is something better else there to do than search me.
What do you think the police can do to make stop and search more effective, so people like you, who aren't criminals, who aren't doing bad things, aren't being stopped?
Do their job properly. Just simple as that. Do your job properly. Know people's rights. Do your job properly.
I also know what it feels like to be stopped and searched.
In fact, the most recent is at this very spot where I'm standing. Now, I remember 4 plainclothes officers approaching me. It was also sudden, also unexpected. They asked me what I was doing. I pointed in that direction and said I was on my way home, and yet I was still searched.
This estate, there's been drug dealing in this estate. Previously, we've been on this estate, we've seen people who stopped people, they've run away from us, we've arrested people with knives, we've arrested people with cannabis, we've arrested drug dealers in this estate, okay? Your behaviour, how you was on your bike, you can film us all if you want, your behaviour when you're on this bike.
Sorry, I'm allowed to film.
Stay still, okay?
I'm allowed.
At that point, the officer took my phone and stopped me recording what was happening, and I was detained and searched.
Okay, we're going to put some gloves on.
Okay, that's fine.
Put some gloves on.
The Misuse of Drugs Act power was used to search me. That's despite me never using drugs in my entire life.
Can you now stay still and stop? I am.
After challenging the police on their grounds for searching me, I was given an apology for what happened and was invited to go out on patrol with their officers to see how they use their stop and search powers.
This month so far in Hackney to stop and search, we've removed 8 weapons of people. So we're actually taking those weapons off the street, and that prevents them being used in what could be murders. And secondly, if people know that the police are out there making use of our stop and search powers, it acts as a deterrent for people to carry weapons.
I went to that call yesterday.
Within minutes, we received reports of a man threatening to stab a woman with a knife in a nearby park in Hackney, North London.
Yeah, we see. Do you know what sort of knife it was?
We had mixed description.
All we've got is this part, so we're just going to have a look around and see if we can see anything that matches the description.
So you're looking for a
tall, slim-build black man with a sort of salt and pepper moustache.
Would there be any doubt in your mind, actually, if you do see this man, whether he needs to be searched or not?
It's about having a suspicion, isn't it? So at the moment, with the information I've got, if we found someone that closely matched that description, then yes, I've got reason for suspicion he might be carrying a knife.
Officers were unable to locate the man who reportedly had a knife. But across the UK, knife crime is on the rise, especially in London. For all the criticisms about stop and search, the Met point to these statistics. In 2012, over 950 young people were stabbed in the capital, and last year, that figure rose to more than 1,200.
The figures I know would suggest that the vast majority of those involved, say, in knife crime are young, they're almost all men, and there's a higher proportion that are black or ethnic minority than not, so we know that. We look at maybe some of our activities to target gang members, and you look at the makeup of those gangs, for example, that could be another reason behind that, or indeed the demographics of any particular part of London.
The person with the knife punched the informant in the face.
So we're going to a call to a shop on Hoxton Street, down south of the borough, and there's been a group of youths in a shop, and the shop owner's asked them to leave. One of those has pulled a knife out, flick knife out, and threatened the shopkeeper with it. So we've got a description. It's a white 13 to 14-year-old, grey tracksuit with blonde hair. So I think we've got 3 units going to this call and CCTV looking. Yeah, you are fine, thank you. I'm sure the officers explained to you, obviously, you've just been searched because there's been an incident where someone's produced a flick knife, yeah? With the shopkeeper, yeah? What's your first name?
Officers stopped this 16-year-old who matches the description.
It's inconvenient, so keep you a minute, we'll just get this sorted, yeah?
But his 15-year-old friend, who is black, is being arrested.
Space for one juvenile male, please. Possession of Class B drugs. So they're both searched using our powers under section of the pace for weapons, so flick knife obviously being a weapon, but actually in this case we found drugs in this boy, so he's been arrested. The other one hasn't got a knife on him, nothing illegal, so we're just going to get his details and he'll be on his way.
Now, these officers are keen for us to see that the Met wants to change public opinions about stop and search. For decades, the force has faced accusations of racism, but for there to be change, there has to be trust.
Do you think black people have to just accept the fact that they will be stopped and searched because it's an effective way in tackling knife and violent crime?
We're not looking to blanket search young black men. We're looking to search gang members, we're looking to search people that we get calls for service that describe the suspect. If we see someone that matches that description, they're going to be searched. Whether they're, as a case today, a young white guy or a young black guy, that's what we operate on. We don't generalise, we don't blanket search people based on their age, their gender, their ethnicity. So it's not a case of all young black men have to accept they're going to be searched.
Adam Pugh spent 4 years on the beat in the Metropolitan Police. During his time, he claims he witnessed officers deliberately stopping young black men.
I think that unconscious bias is a massive issue within the Metropolitan Police that permeates the entire police service at every level. I think that you know, ultimately racism with the Metropolitan Police is a massive issue that infects it infects the police at every level.
What were some of the things that you saw whilst you were in the Met?
I've seen many police officers stop people that what I consider would be based on their racial prejudices because of the colour of their skin. And even when we were training to be police officers, I distinctly remember that we had one particular trainer who was very open in his views. His words were, if we rock up to a call when there's a group of 8 or 9 young black guys wearing hoodies, they're going to get spun, they're going to get turned over, they're going to get stopped. And my response to that was, why? You know, in this scenario that you've sort of concocted, there's no other information other than the fact that they are young black men and that they are wearing hoodies, and that is the only factor in your decision making in that they're going to get searched.
Do I believe though that officers are using their powers inappropriately based on that unconscious bias of race? The majority, I'd say, are not doing that. You know, we act based on the information we receive and the individual circumstances we're responding to.
But you accept there are perhaps a small number of officers who are misusing their powers, and as a result of that, that's causing problems between the police and certain ethnic communities.
I'm not saying they're misusing their powers. You know, again, there were complaints that have been made that will have been investigated, and maybe it has been found that there weren't the grounds there for the search. But we were a massive organisation, and some people will make mistakes or get it wrong.
In the last year, the Metropolitan Police carried out nearly 136,000 stop and searches, down from 152,000 the year before. The Home Office tells us stop and search reforms are working, but are all police forces across the country using the tactic fairly? Nick Glynn is a former Leicestershire Police Chief Inspector.
I think there are still police officers across the country who are misusing their powers, yes. It's less than it was 3, 4, 5 years ago. By misuse, I mean, you know, they haven't actually got the grounds to use them, or they're using the incorrect power, or indeed they're using, whether it's conscious or unconscious bias, prejudice, discrimination.
Since he was a teenager, Nick has been stopped and searched more than 30 times whilst off duty.
There will be a lot of people watching this who will find it absolutely staggering that somebody like yourself, a police inspector, is being stopped and searched.
Yeah, the interesting comparison is if I talk to my former colleagues and ask them how many times they've been stopped by the police, some of them have never been stopped, which I always find amazing because I've been stopped since I was 17 years old. So I think it's the comparison. It's like, why is it me and why is it not former colleagues who have a different skin colour to me.
For many young black men like me, our first interaction with the police tend to be through stop and search, which all too often lead to no further action due to a lack of evidence. But the police say they make no apology in saving lives when it comes to stopping people.
I've seen numerous stabbings in this borough in the past year that have happened out on the street, and someone, in order for that to happen, has been walking around carrying a weapon on their person. And actually, if we'd been able to stop and search them before that, that horrific injury could have been avoided. So this is why it's incredibly important, and it does save lives.
The Home Office told us no one should be stopped because of their race or ethnicity. Chief constables will need to explain disparities in their force areas, because if stop and search powers are misused, it is counterproductive and damages confidence in policing.